the UN is reviewing the US. It's a periodic review. There's nothing too weird or anything like that. But it's reviewing the US for its human rights record. And what's particularly interesting about the story is which countries are actually in the Human Rights Commission of the UN. I mean, the story is reported by mainstream media, obviously, and it's kind of interesting, the contrast between those countries and what they actually,
the people they're judging,
yeah,
right? Because I can already imagine the kind of coalition of villains that we're talking about casting judgment on the United States.
Yeah, exactly.
Here.
So it turns out that the Human Rights Council includes critics like Iran, Syria, Venezuela, Russia, and China.
It sounds like a Monty Python sketch or something, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, the quote from the article is these countries questioned and scrutinized the United States record on rights as the Human Rights Council gave the U.S. its turn for a regular examination of every UN member state's record on human rights, known as the Universal Periodic Review. And so this is a process that happens regularly, as I said. Every 5 years, the country is reviewed, and the U.S. Was being reviewed together with 13 other states, I think it was. So it's being pointed out in relation to the U.S. Especially, but it's not just them. It's just that the story is funny because of it.
Yeah.
Right. And so the other funny thing about it is what they actually have problems with, right? So there's one caveat to it, which is Syria, which is alleging occupation and war troubles, basically, which is kind of legit because the US has been in Syria and has done some questionable things in there, and so that's an outlier, because all the others were criticizing the US for its domestic policies, right?
Right. Yeah.
For the response to George Floyd's death and things like that.
It seems fair to point out that the US was in Syria to defeat ISIS. Is that what they're referring to?
Yes, but it's also referring to it's also bringing up the questionable things the US did in Syria.
I mean, what examples do they give?
Well, basically funding the opposition to the government. I mean, it's the government representative that's speaking at the UN. So the US had funded the opposition in Syria, which
is this under the Obama administration?
Both. I mean, it started under Obama, and most things were happening under Obama. But then
it's
Trump,
also
yeah.
It's the sort of continuation of the US international.
I mean,
policy,
even if Trump really wanted to, he wouldn't have been able to do anything with it. So. Or not anything. I shouldn't say that. Yeah.
Yeah, but
not that
I'm
much.
trying to place blame. I'm just trying to understand the continuity of the process. You know, so we're talking about the United States as an institution rather than the actions of any one president.
Right. Yeah. No, and I mean, even though I say that Trump couldn't do much at the beginning, he could have certainly done stuff throughout this presidency. He's done some things about Syria, right?
Yeah.
The situation is not the same as it was 4 years ago, but at the same time, he obviously could have done more, and the situation is still pretty dire, let's say, which is a shame. But yeah, so the U.S. defended itself by referring to the progresses made in Guantanamo. They cited reductions in people who are actually being held there. Then the response to George Floyd's death being a legal process with the policeman, and then a general.
Just to be clear, hasn't Derek Chauvin been exonerated? Didn't he get let off?
I think he got let off, but I don't know the details about that one.
I don't know the details either.
Yeah.
I just saw the headlines going past. By the way, he's not being charged for this.
Yeah.
And there were, apparently in the autopsy there are unusually high levels of fentanyl in his system and things.
Yeah, I heard about that as well.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the police in the US being exonerated doesn't exactly mean that they had not done nothing wrong.
That does not. That's true. That is true. So
right. But yes,
We'll put a pin in that and come back to that in another podcast.
yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Yes, and so the U.S. representative also cited the rule of law and kind of the process being important, which is a good point to be brought up. But you would expect him to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And I imagine that China and Iran were just blushing as they did.
well, yeah. So the Chinese representative, sorry for not pronouncing the name. He rushed through apparently the 9 points of concern, which were some of which were systemic racism, politicization of COVID-19, proliferation of guns, and military interventions abroad. I've already mentioned that. But yeah, those were the central themes.
Wow, that's quite staggering.
Yeah. And then the Chinese representative also said, quote, "Stop interfering for political reasons in other countries, internal affairs under the pretext of human rights." Which is fair, but it's coming from China.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in the defense of China, they can say we don't put any pretext of human rights in place when we meddle in other countries.
But and so the comments that the authors of the article add are that China has often alleged that other countries unfairly poke into its domestic affairs with their concerns about the rights situation in Hong Kong, Tibet, and Western Xinjiang. So that's
It's so embarrassing.
I feel like it's an important context to mention this.
Should we ask the Tibetans how they feel about all of this?
Yeah. Right.
That is mad.
And so moving on, further down in the article, it's the ACLU gets asked about this, and
they don't side with China, do they?
No. I mean,
they might.
Not at the moment.
Not yet.
No.
Sorry, carry on. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's like the Saudis being on the UN Women's Council, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's tremendous. But sorry,
I mean, so it's we're making fun of it, but it's also important to mention that these processes in the UN are highly formalized, and so it's not that the Western countries or the rich countries or powerful ones get to tell the others what to do and if they should or shouldn't go to shouldn't be part of any committee or any human rights thing, but instead what they do is that they rotate, right? They apply and they get confirmed because that's the way it's done, and basically everyone's distrustful of each other within the UN because there are different states with different interests. Some of them are together, some of them not, and so it's held together by this this procedural kind of requirement, and so it's funny to see things like Saudi Arabia being on the women's rights panel, but at the same time, it's not unexpected. It's a fun sight, but it's not something to be kind of surprised at.
Yeah.
Right, and so back to the ACLU. The US had put out a report on its human rights record, and the ACLU said that the report is one of the worst attempts to cover up US human rights violations since the civil rights movement. And so the ACLU director also said that, quote, "While the American voters elected a new president who is more committed to universal human rights, the international community must continue to hold the US accountable, blah, blah, blah." So the ACLU openly, or at least its director openly supports Joe Biden, and they think Joe Biden is good on human rights. So
where would they get that impression?
From the media?
I guess that's it, isn't it?
Might be. Well, Biden's actual record includes supporting and/or defending wars in Iraq, Syria, Serbia, and Libya. That's been fact-checked throughout, so feel free to check that.
I imagine that Biden voted for the Iraq War, didn't he?
He did, yeah. He later said it was a mistake, but he did. Right. He didn't seem too remorseful. So, Biden's record also includes being anti-gay. There's an article by pinknews.co.uk which says that which says that after some older things that had happened, it seems that LGBT plus rights were barely a blip on his radar, on Biden's radar, until the 90s, when Biden's voting record begins to look decidedly homophobic. and so there's a list of things that Biden then voted for or against. In relation to gay rights. It wasn't exactly flattering. He only flipped on gay marriage in 2012, but since then he's been credited with a lot of like pro-LGBT stuff. Fair enough, but there's still this history behind him, so it might say more about his nature, his kind of persona of a politician than his commitment to anything.
He's had a far greater number of years in office opposed to all of these things than in favour, is what you're saying,
And so the last thing that I have here is him obviously being tough on crime. That's been a major theme throughout the election. So in 94, he led the charge to push through a crime bill, which increased kind of these, how would I say it? They call it Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act, which indicates what it is. It was basically it's been both attacked and defended by a lot of people, but it instituted a lot of tough on crime things, which were in some cases criticized by human rights assessors, let's say.
And this is what they're all alleging is Biden's role in filling jails with young black men, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
I can see you got the 3 strikes mandatory life sentences for repeat offenders. You can see how that puts a lot of people in jail.
It was also big on drugs and locking people up for drug offenses. So I would suggest that the director of the ACLU takes a second look into Biden's human rights record before endorsing him. That's all I'm saying. Right.
Well, I mean, I don't think he's likely to. I think I've found the narrative surrounding Biden, the attempt at painting Biden as some great unifier and some champion, like Martin Luther King-esque figure, has been really gross, actually.
Well, in his speeches and in his like public appearances, he's been like that. He's been really like wholesome and unifying, right? But that's not like it's what he's doing now, and there's no real expectation that he'd do it in the future, or if you look in the past, like he's not really known for like doing that. Like that's not that's his angle now, and that's fine, you know. Like, and in the future, what do I know? In the future, he might be that, and he might be like really unifying and really wholesome. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. But if you judge a man by his actions rather than his words, Biden seems to be a bit two-faced, corrupt, and somewhat of a liar, I would say. But like a corporate shill politician, like the sort of neoliberal establishment, is generally how I characterize him, and I think that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, I think characterizing him as establishment is probably the most accurate. What can you do after spending like 25% of the whole U.S. history in politics? Fact check me on.
It's not that long, is it?
Fact check me on that. It's not 25. It's something like that. Maybe it's a bit less.
Yeah.
It's not exactly that.
But it's something like 47 years or something like that. Yeah. It's a really long
out
time.
Of 250.
Yeah. So he has been there for quite some time. But sorry, what was the next thing you wanted to go on to?
Sorry. So the Human Rights Council of the UN was criticized a month ago by The Guardian, which quoted a non-profit organization saying it's like arsonists joining the fire brigade, which it's justifiable. Yeah, that's. I
mean, the things like Cuba, Belarus, North Korea, Syria, Iran, and China, and other champions of human rights.
Exactly. That's what the UN Watch kind of reported. Let's say a month later. If you put that up. So a month later, these repressive regimes that were like arsonists joining the fire brigade were now among other champions of human rights. So that's fun.
I mean, that is I mean, it's hilarious, depressing.
Yeah. Well, and so the last picture that we have is what China is asking the US to focus on with respect to its human rights records. And so among those things, it's a bit small in the actual report, but you can find like his handle. That's fine. So eliminating systemic racism, racial discrimination, white supremacy, religious intolerance, and xenophobia. I mean, I'm sure some like those things exist in the US, but it's also China saying this. So,
I mean, where do you even start? Like, just
a whole lot
it's
of
like
fun.
Hannibal Lecter telling you to be a pacifist and not hurt someone. Like, okay, Hannibal, but like, have you considered that I don't take lectures from murderers?
Yeah.
You know, on when it comes to hurting people, and much the same. Like, I just find this amazing. Like white supremacy. I mean, how are they even defining that? I want the Chinese to define that for me. Because if they mean, you know, an ideology that's created by white people, then isn't the Communist Chinese Party white supremacist?
I don't think they mean that. I actually think they don't really mean anything with this.
Yeah,
I think this is a strategy to push back against the US and to make it more defensive within the UN and to make more of the other states in the UN to be basically angled against the US, right? And so it's just part of China's strategy to say something that will foment discord among
put China
among
in a
Western
leading
states.
position. Yeah, that's a very Machiavellian view of it.
And so it's understandable that they do it. It's just funny that this is the context which comes out of it, right?
It's the idea, man. The idea.